Chapter 5, Yari. Yari sat in silence, alone in the dark. Although still, with her heartbeat at its normal, slow, deliberate pace, she was anything but sedate. Her brain was alive with activity, her eyes constantly flittering, interacting with the myriad of computer apps, simultaneously monitoring systems, analyzing data, and communicating with others. Multitasking on the network was the elixir that kept her engaged, challenged, and fulfilled. Or at least, mostly fulfilled. A chance meeting with O a few years ago had introduced her to aspects of life that she had not studied in school, things that a computer could not simulate. Using one of the monitoring apps, Yari watched from another room as the elevator door opened, the suite's lighting turn on, and O stroll into the foyer. He carefully placed his helmet on a small side table, unfastened the remainder of his life suit, and stepped out of it. He purposefully folded it up, pausing a moment to admire his newly taped hole, then placed it next to his helmet. She studied everything he did, especially noting, with pleasure, how he grinned like a small boy, full of anticipation as he headed down the hallway towards her bedroom. He found her room empty. Yuri considered calling out to O, but was curious how he would react. Although she lived alone at the tower, her suite was designed to house a large team of people and included numerous bedrooms, offices, dining areas, a recreation room, and a fitness room. She wondered if he would methodically search her out or simply call to her. What kind of search pattern would he employ to find her? And how long would it take him to explore the entire suite? Still, O was predictably unpredictable, and he fascinated her with his ability to reach conclusions without the logic or data she thrived on. She had learned years ago that his life experience should not be underestimated. She observed his initial mixed look of surprise and disappointment. It then turned into a mischievous grin as O started systematically sticking his head into other rooms while he backtracked down the hallway, looking for her. When he reached the kitchen, however, he became distracted and walked over to Yari's large commercial-grade refrigerator. He opened the door, and although she couldn't see what he was reaching for, she knew it was the half-tube of goat cheese he had left behind during his last visit. She decided it was time to act, and her disembodied voice startled him as it emanated from the walls around him. "Hey, O, I am in the recreation room." She watched through the kitchen cameras while his body became tense, unable to move. He seemed to be debating with himself between the food and her. "And O," continued Yari, "the flash of light you observed earlier was a human-made object entering our atmosphere within a 40-kilometer radius of Houston. Colorado said it is likely an old satellite whose orbit finally decayed from lack of power. Imagery of the object is not yet available. I reviewed its trajectory and found the angle of entry to be inconsistent with an orbital route. I have requested Colorado to further investigate its likely origin and final descent location." "I thought all of the old solar power satellites had fallen decades ago," said O to the cabinets. "You are correct," said Yari. "Only the most critical satellites were replaced with nuclear drives and continue to orbit. However, there is still substantial space junk that periodically falls, burning up before reaching the Earth's surface." O let go of the cheese in the mostly empty refrigerator, then closed its door. He looked over at the clock on the microwave oven. Based on his facial expression, she surmised he was calculating how long it had taken her to research the flash in the sky. She enjoyed demonstrating her analytical prowess and didn't understand why he was continuously amazed at her capability. He simply does not understand the power of the network and its vast array of AI apps. "Oh," she prodded. He left the kitchen, trotted down the hallway, and slid into the recreation room doing his best risky business impersonation. He zeroed in on her, sitting on the couch, and their eyes locked. He visibly winced when he realized she had started and finished without him. She saw his reaction and wondered if it was her eye color that gave it away. "An emergency UN World Council meeting has been scheduled for tomorrow morning. The director of NASA, Dr. Gelder, is the only speaker on the agenda," she stated matter-of-factly. Yari sat comfortably with a large bath towel wrapped around her, while rubbing her wet hair vigorously with a smaller towel. She stared up at O, analyzing his reaction to her news. He displayed a moment of visible disappointment, probably still fretting about missing his opportunity with her, but then shrugged and smiled at her. "Interesting. Just a minute. O left the room, returning less than a minute later. He peeled off his socks and plopped on the couch next to her. He placed his bare feet on the coffee table, ready to listen, but otherwise focused on smearing goat cheese on a small, tasteless square wafer. He had always loved goat cheese, and one of his happiest days since Black Dawn was when he heard the goat population was thriving in the underground farming habitats. You have no idea how lucky you are that the center sends you boxes of food each week instead of micromanaging your nutrition at every meal, O said to her. He took another bite. Okay, so what's going on at the UN? Yari rubbed her hair harder, and she felt the towel around her body loosen. She intentionally allowed it to fall to her lap, exposing her breasts. She caught O staring at them and watched him struggle, holding back his impulse to reach out. She could see the physical desire building up in his eyes and felt herself stir inside as well, even though she had self-climaxed not long before. His response made her feel inexplicably good about herself, and she reasoned that humans would need more evolution to be able to suppress such involuntary reactions. She decided not to delay their urgent conversation and slowly pulled her towel back up. She watched his eyes follow the towel back over her breasts, which were now clearly aroused by his attention. When she saw his eyes looking back into hers, she responded, "The emergency meeting notification didn't provide any specific agenda information other than naming the speaker." Yari watched O's eyes narrow as he took in her words. Then she continued, "In the 60 years since the UN World Council was established to govern the original 20 population centers, there have only been 3 emergency meetings. Each were significant events: the destruction of the New Delhi and New Jakarta population centers, and the identification of the virus that eventually decimated the European populations." O considered her words. Gelder is not one to over-dramatize things. He must have some big-time news. "I reviewed NASA's research project list," said Yari, "but nothing stood out that could potentially yield findings of a magnitude appropriate for an emergency meeting. The next quarterly World Council meeting is coming up soon, so the topic is urgent enough not to wait. I suspect NASA has made an interstellar discovery of some kind, perhaps an impending comet collision or another observance of extraterrestrial life." She watched him intently, genuinely interested to see what he said next. He frequently surprised her with his insights and intellectual capacity, especially considering that his DNA had been formed using old-fashioned, natural breeding methods. "You couldn't hack the NASA network or Gelder's communications logs for additional clues?" he asked. "It's not possible to bypass NASA's firewall. When I built it, I ensured it could not be hacked and gave up my administrators access following its implementation. I have not been able to obtain further information regarding Dr. Gelder's emergency." Yari raised an eyebrow, watching O process the information. With most people, she could quickly predict their thoughts and actions, but not with O. They had been together for almost 5 years, yet he still frequently surprised her. "I've known Gelder a long time," O said. "Making announcements at a UN meeting isn't really his style. He is a pure scientist, not into politics, nor taking credit for his team's efforts. He'd rather have the Houston executive director publicize NASA's work, so Gelder can focus his energy on the research itself." O's voice trailed off. Yari watched him churn through the logic of what little information they possessed, patiently awaiting his conclusions. After a minute or so, he continued, "Yeah, I bet NASA has been working something on the side. Something sensitive. Something they didn't want a career politician like our executive director to undermine. Gelder's making the presentation himself because he wants to control the narrative with the council, without the director putting his spin on it or stopping the communications altogether." O seemed to freeze, staring out into space, further contemplating the theory. After a moment, he bit down on the cheese-loaded wafer and began chewing. "Yup," he said. "That's what it is. Gelder's been working on something. A project so political, he had to keep it confidential, even from his boss." "What do you think it could be?" she asked. "Something big," he responded. "Something that needs to be shared with everyone at the same time, without political spin." More silence. "The sun," Yari said. He smiled back. "Bingo. That must be it. They figured out something about the sun." He turned to face Yari. "Nice deduction. I bet you're right on the money." Yari felt an uncommon, giddy feeling well up inside her from O's praise, and she immediately suppressed it before it could manifest in a facial expression. She didn't understand his remark about on the money and decided it must be another old phrase. She made a mental note to research its usage later. Hmm, smart play by Gelder. O settled back on the couch. The key council members are Moscow, Beijing, and Houston. Our Houston director will need to support Gelder, pretending he had authorized the project. Otherwise, he will lose face with the council. Beijing's Dr. Yuan is another pure scientist and will likely align with Gelder's actions and conclusions. Moscow will see they are outnumbered and passively agree with everyone until they methodically determine their best strategy going forward. Smart guy, that Gelder. O shoved another wafer full of goat cheese into his mouth. Yup, if this is Gelder's news, if they found a way to bring the sun back, this could get really interesting, he said. Yuri watched O's eyes widen as he thought through the consequences of sunlight returning to Earth. His face displayed a Cheshire cat-like grin. This would open up such a can of worms across the centers, he continued. Political power shifts at the UN. Freedom for people to ultimately live above ground, outside of the centers. There are few of us left that remember what it was like. They were both quiet for a few moments, letting the implications of their theory soak in. And no need to keep monitoring our atmosphere, worrying about when we hit 400 below, and we all get zapped with cosmic radiation. Can't wait to hear what comes out of that meeting. You going to listen in? He asked. Yes, I will contact you afterward. Wow, said O. I may need to skip watching the marathon tonight just to play out all of the possible scenarios in my mind. It's like dreaming you won the lottery and coming up with all the different things you would do with the money. By the way, you still coming over to my place for the opening ceremony? Yari nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She worried about another impact that they hadn't discussed. Scientists had determined that the sun's rays had been a primary cause of human aging. As O liked to say, with Black Dawn, 100 had become the new 50. She had mixed feelings about what Dr. Gelder's news might be. She felt an inexplicable emotional connection to O and feared that rebooting the sun would shorten his longevity in their time together. Her expression softened, her eyes took on a shade of brown, and she looked down at his crotch. She had only shared her urgent news and decided the vital news could wait for another time. Oh, you have 124 minutes until your next feeding. You can leave now and hike back with 4 minutes to spare. Or we can pursue our standard protocol in my chambers, take a shower, and I can drive you back in the tower's rover with time to spare. She watched him pretend to carefully assess his options, then slowly reach over for a corner of her towel and gently pull it down. A thought crossed her mind. With a twitch of her eyes, she signaled the network to turn the lights off, leaving the room in complete darkness and O blinded. Yari leveraged her short stature to duck under his grasp and step to the side of the couch, leaving O with only her bath towel in his hands. She stood, amused, only a towel on her head, watching him flail his arms, trying to determine where she went. Her embedded eye lenses mixed virtualization, infrared, thermal, and other technologies to allow her to see with or without light. She didn't understand O's preference to utilize his natural eyesight, and curiosity overcame her. She decided she would disable her lenses and join him in total darkness, but only after she reached her bedroom. You should have been wearing your glasses, she teased him and started walking down the hallway towards her room. You know where to find me.